This is dangerous. There we go. Good morning, Logan. I kind of feel bad getting up here. Honestly, I wish that we could split the time between Rick and Christian. My time, just split it up. I've enjoyed both their presentations so much, and I've been able to see the audience, most of the audience from where I was sitting too, and it's so, I don't know, cathartic to me. Not that I would expect that you wouldn't be engaged, but to see two such great, fiery presenters and everyone so engaged while they're presenting. I have the benefit of going to a lot of educational functions, and it's not always like that. So thank you both for really putting your heart into it today. So Christian has been referencing me as the sort of global representation here, and Jackie alluded to this last night. I have to tell this anecdote because I'll never in my life get a chance to do it again. So I flew here from Tokyo yesterday. I was there for the Japan Prize, and I actually spoke today at this time yesterday. So, yeah. Pretty crazy. So if I'm a little discombobulated, I did get some great rest last night, but last night's dinner was crazy. And then I wanted to say, just while it was fresh in everyone's minds, something, Rick, that really resonated with me when you were talking. And I say this, I don't say it as eloquently as you, but when I'm working with students and teachers all over the country and sometimes the world, the main thing that I notice is that every single tool that I use as a professional, as a young professional, is either blocked or limited or too expensive for the schools. And so I just really appreciate you creating like a ground in your community and everyone involved in that community where people can actually use the tools that are required of them, and not just the tools, but experience the learning that comes with those tools, like you said. So thank you for doing that. So I'm going to tell you about TED and TED education. I think I'm going to take a second just to explain TED at large, even though a lot of you have heard of it, but I know some haven't, so just humor me for 1 second. TED stands for Technology, Entertainment, and Design. It's a conference that happens in California and in Europe. Well, actually, just globally. It's been in Europe for the past couple of years. It will be moving to Singapore, I believe, in 2 years from now. And it brings together basically interesting people doing interesting things from all around the world to share their ideas. And it is where I met Christian. He's one of those people who's gotten to share a set of ideas. But the stage is really colored with so many fascinating people: scientists, designers, technologists, artists, teachers. The trick is you get 18 minutes and you're not allowed to sell anything. So it makes for a very short, genuine talk. And we record these talks at a very high production value, and we edit them, and then we put them online for free and for the world to share. And the talks, there's about 1,200 of them now. And sometime in December, they will have been viewed on the current trajectory over 1 billion times. Just pretty incredible. They've also only been around online for the past 5.5 years. So it's pretty amazing. And through that TED conference, a couple of other initiatives have happened. I'm the director of TED Ed, but I do want to tell you about TEDx really quickly. TEDx is an initiative where basically local communities can apply to TED for a license. And we empower them to host a TED-like event in their community. We support them, and they're able to borrow the brand and book speakers. And I always just like to tell this stat because it blows my mind. There's an average of 6 to 7 events hosted every single day throughout the world, TEDx events. And just and this is a 2-year-old initiative. The power behind that sort of community organization, I'd actually love to see what Christian makes of it. I've never got to talk to you more about that, but it really just blows my mind. So anyways, through all that engagement through TEDx and through TED Ed, so many people who are passionate about education were calling and who were using TED Talks and TEDx Talks within their educational realms, started calling for TED to create an option that was optimized for the classroom. And I was lucky enough to have been a TED Fellow in and around that time, and I actually pitched them on a certain project that I also called TED Ed, and they said, oh wow, there's a lot of synergy around this, but we're not quite big enough an organization to do this right yet. And so that was in 2009, so fast forward a couple of years, I came on as a solo team, a solo person on a team for a year, and then just this January I was able to hire the rest of my team and we were able to launch TED Ed. And I'm going to basically give you a tour of it today. First I want to tell you about the content that we make, and then I'm going to tell you what we do with that content. So I described TED Talks as this conference where we record people speaking live, sharing their ideas. TED Ed is not that. It can be that. You can use TED Talks within the TED Ed environment, but we actually strive to create a different content form. And so what we do is we have an open nomination system where anybody in the world, anybody in this room can nominate anyone else. And it's basically this effort to source what we call lessons we're sharing from people all over the world. And we have a focus on producing lessons captured from people who are actually officially involved in education, but it's not limited to that because obviously there's many people, not just teachers, who have lessons to share. And the next major differentiator between the TED Talks is that it's audio-based. So we actually record this lesson by sending them audio recording equipment. They record it, and the reason we do that is because we wanted to simplify it, not have it be conference-based, so that we could have many of these being captured at once. And so we've had thousands of people record audio. They send us the audio, we edit it, sweeten it, make sure it's pitch perfect, and then we have professional animators who are also coming to us via a nomination system, bring those lessons to life. Right now we have 70 lessons. They've been online since late March, and we actually launched with 10, so that's about how fast we've grown. It's a slower production line, but those talks have been viewed 10 million times just since March in classrooms around the world, so we're very excited about that. I want to just show you one story. This is Aaron Reedy. He's a biology teacher in Colorado, and he did an animation on sex determination within the animal kingdom, so how you know, a variety of species of animals, what factors determine whether they're a boy or a girl, including humans. And as you can see in this tweet, after 7 years, he estimated they had delivered this lesson to 1,000 students. It was always every student's favorite lesson. In 3 days on TED Ed, he displayed it to 13,000. And as of today, he's at 860,000. And that, again, that was just a couple of months ago that the lesson went up. And I love this tweet for two reasons. One, that it exhibits how our platform is enabling a teacher's voice to go beyond the classroom, but also because he doesn't say teaching. He says explained. We have no delusions that a video is the same as teaching. We see this as proof that a video can support and supplement teaching, but having been a teacher myself, some days a good one, some days a not so good one, showing a video is not teaching. Teaching is an act of jazz in many ways in my mind, that you can hold engagement and actually empower other people to run the class. But still, we try and create videos that enable that jazz to be louder. This is a video, and it's going to show you, I'm just going to pause it really quick. This is the TED Ed homepage, and so I've told you a little bit how we make the content, but I want to show you about the tool that we've designed that helps this content be used. So I'm going to sort of duck down here just so everyone can see and sort of play call this video walkthrough. This is the homepage. Each of these is one of those animated lessons that I was just describing, the audio from a teacher and the animation from a professional animator. And we arrange these lessons in two ways, equal weight. One is by series, and I'm just going to pause it. And the reason we took the time to do a series is because we're very excited about the internet's capacity to break down the silos that are in education. You know, we sort of have these areas of knowledge that we call subjects: math, science, social studies. And they're important, they're useful, they're good labels. But the exciting thing about learning, we think, and the exciting thing about knowledge is that it's interdisciplinary by nature. We came up with those labels. And so we wanted to take a stab at trying to capture some of that by having a relatively lightweight series organization. And I think one example I often use is perhaps you are curious about the nature of waves. Obviously, that has implications in music. If you're playing an instrument, those sound waves. It has implications in science if you're studying the ocean, yet it's still the same knowledge. And so we look for these patterns within knowledge and look to break them out of the subjects. But that said, we also organize them by subject so that the teacher can find it quickly. Like I said, equal weight. And so this is going to go down to the science, and I'll show you a lesson by Adam Savage, the guy from Mythbusters, who I love. So this is going to show you what we actually do on the lesson page. You'll see that as the video is playing, you can take a short comprehension quiz. If you get it right, it tells you. And if you get it wrong, it helps you learn how to get it right. I don't know if you noticed that, but it fast forwarded to the part of the video that the question was referencing. This is all by design of the teacher. And then next you have open answer questions, so that's obviously going to get you thinking a lot more how to answer something that doesn't have the answers as options. And then the dig deeper section is a combination of text and links that if you're curious about the subject, you can explore a little further. But this next feature is sort of the key power of TED Ed, and we call it flipping a video. And what it does is it serves, so there's this big global platform, and again, we know that we have no idea how teachers are going to be using this. We'll slowly learn as they do use it, as we collect data, as we collect user stories, but we really don't know what the specific need of the teacher for the specific student that they're trying to reach. And so that's where this flip this video functionality comes into play. I just clicked it, and now you'll see I'm actually able to edit the lesson. So I'm entering a customized title, and then I'm setting context for the lesson based on what I'm trying to discuss in class. I'm deselecting questions. I could add a multiple choice, or I could add a particularly challenging open answer question. And then I can get rid of those dig deeper links or change them if I want. And then I publish it. And this is sort of the key to understanding what's happening here. So when you publish that, it's on a new page, a new URL, and you're the only person with the possession of this. And so therefore, you can actually measure everything that happens to it. So in a classroom, it means you can measure whether students checked out the lesson that you sent them, whether they got the questions right or wrong, how they got them right or wrong. So if you identify an area where they're struggling based on their responses, you could address that on an individualized basis. Another cool thing, though, is that people who are not teachers are using this, and they're using these more public sharing options like Facebook and Twitter, and simply using it to beam out lessons into the world to their own network based on their own expertise. So it's a pretty exciting sort of environment for lesson creation. And there's one more major feature that's working its way too. And that's that everything I just showed you, you can actually do to any video on YouTube. So photosynthesis, random term, flip the first YouTube result. How to do a push-up, could edit that lesson. I think I have one more example, yeah, writing code. So it's basically leveraging, I can't even cite the YouTube stats because they change every day. I think it's something like 48 hours of video is uploaded every minute from around the world or something. I mean, you can definitely fact check that, but it's so mind-boggling, and it changes each month. It's a new stat that you have to memorize. And so it's also an open platform. Obviously, anyone can upload something to YouTube. One thing is that I know people get concerned about the security of that, but keep in mind, you can use when you flip the lesson, you're the only person with the link. So it's not like someone could flip a super terrible or inappropriate lesson and all of a sudden it's on TED-Ed. It's only with that person. And then there is a process for nominating great lessons, and our team reviews them editorially and puts them, features them on the site. So that's the walkthrough of the site. I did want to take a second while it's fresh to show you what it looked like on the back end. So let's say I shared that how to do a push-up video. This is the students who engaged with the lesson. You can see I can get a sense of which questions they completed, which they got right on the first attempt, the total attempts, and whether or not they did the open answer questions. And of course, I can see those responses and give them feedback. This is a beta website. We launched it in April. We're really excited to develop this area among many others. But that's the general snapshot. And so having launched in April and had the opportunity to basically review and analyze millions of interactions on the site, we've seen a couple of patterns arise and a couple of user stories that I think are, worth sharing. Teachable moments, probably all your educators are definitely familiar with the phase, and even if you're not, you can probably imagine what it means. It's basically this concept of, this sort of, be it silly or be it soul-stirring moment that captures all the attention in a room or in your periphery. And at that moment, as a group, you can use the sort of excitement that it incites in you to explore the knowledge that is relevant to it. That's sort of a really long, wordy definition of teachable moments. But I want to tell you about one teachable moment that happened in my class that if TED-Ed was around, I would have used it for. So, I hope I didn't spoil the surprise, but basically when I was a high school teacher, I was from Athens, Georgia, teaching, it was basically a study skills class. I was a special education teacher, so I had students from lots of different classes coming to my class to get help for their other classes. And one of them, did I lose? There we go. And one day, the class that I had was just completely derailed. No one was paying attention. No one was even discussing with each other. Like, it's just way off course. And I was trying to figure out what was going on, and I eventually, by listening to the right people in the right places at the right times, found out that a UFO had been seen in our county the night before, and one of our most gregarious students had been the one who saw it. And so he was busy convincing the whole class. And there was a write-up on this, if you look at this little ribbon on the left side here, from a trusted source in Athens, that the UFO had been seen. And then I actually just threw this YouTube video in here just to give you a sense of how rampant this notion that there was aliens in Athens was, at least in my classroom. And so, everyone's talking about it. How can I convert that into something that's somewhat more useful than just, wondering if there are aliens? And so we have this one video on TED-Ed that was done by Jill Tarter. And I don't know, how many of you have seen the movie Contact by any chance with Jodie Foster? That's a good sampling. All right. I got this one joke a little later that at least some of y'all get. But anyways, Jill Tarter is who that movie is based on, basically, who Jodie Foster's character is based on. She's an incredible scientist who explores, the possibility of intelligent life through an organization called SETI. And she did this great lesson for us that puts forth the Drake equation, which is an equation that's used to algebraically explore the possibility of intelligent life and intelligent communities around the world, around the universe. And it's an unsolved equation, obviously, but it's just a way to quantify the exploration. It's really neat video, really well animated. And so if TED Ed was around, this is how I would have used it. First, I would have customized it to make it local. I would have also put it in all caps for dramatic effect, as you can tell. But I want my students to know that, you know, this isn't some like random equation that, you know, some person that they'll never meet named Jill Tarter came up with. This is actually meant for every person to be able to access. That's why Drake took the time to simplify it to, you know, 8 variables. Next, I would thank TED Ed for them trying to come up with some copy for me, because I'm busy, it's late at night, I have class the next day, but it's not quite right, so I just change it to something that makes it a little, again, to localize it to Athens and just makes it a little bit more exciting, because I know my students better than TED Ed does. And then next, I would choose to not include the irrelevant multiple choice questions and then include a couple of others. And then I'd add this open answer question that makes them, or that checks whether or not they actually own the knowledge. So it's one thing to just ask a question, but you can see if they answered this one, how would, if there's a UFO in Athens, then how would the equation change? They have to understand the depth of the whole idea, because they're actually applying that knowledge and changing the equation. It's just something that the tool enabled me to do. And then lastly, I would throw out the proposed Dig Deeper materials, because I'm pivoting this lesson. I want it to actually be about media literacy. So I'm going to try and debunk that trusted source badge that we saw and ask them to really question this article that they're subscribing to so deeply. And also tell them about Jill Tarter and Contact. And then lastly, I would add this. This was the lame joke that I was telling you about. If you remember the quote from the movie, this says, "They shouldn't have sent a scientist or a poet. They should have sent a student from Athens High." So, there's the lesson. I've sent it out, and now you can see from my dashboard, this is a very zoomed in version of the dashboard, but I would have 25 students, and here's how they did, or here's how they're doing. This is always active. And then if I zoom into a particular student, like I said, you can see how they got it wrong. So I have a good sense that this student is probably guessing by looking at the 2 gray wrong answers and then adding B. So I'm going to, talk to them about that. This is another story. We have a new feature called Best Flips. Like I was telling you, you can flip or create a lesson around any video on YouTube. And when you're done with it, if you're particularly proud of the lesson, you can nominate it. And it's a way that we envision building out and localizing this educational platform all around the world by trusting the teachers that are using it to create great lessons, and then employing people to determine whether the lessons are of quality or not, and then basically building out the library for free to share with the world. And so here's one example of a teacher who's done that. First, here's the Best Flips tab. This is a brand new feature. We haven't even actually advertised it yet, but here are some great examples of videos that are lessons that have been created that we're now featuring. And then I'm going to show you one of them. So this is a teacher from Massachusetts named Greg Schwanbeck. And
so let's see what you clocked. All right. There's a high of 15.3. That is a high. You hit a high of 15.9. Normally, you're not supposed to accelerate at the end. You're supposed to be decelerating. But how about here? That's you and Tim Tebow. You knew Tebow was going to show up. You knew that. Look at this. That's you against Jacoby Ford. If you keep hanging in there, you'll catch him. That's you with a 3-yard head start against Jacoby Ford.
That's not even close. Why are they coming to get my friend?
All right.
Like that?
And now we're going to give you 5 yards. Okay? 5 yards with Jacoby Ford. Here he comes. All right, now how about Chance
Cody?
Cody?
Don't do this to me, Mount Cody.
You and Mount Cody. And look at the mount. Running easy. Running easy.
Isn't that great? So that's an ESPN video that this math and physics teacher in Massachusetts flipped for his class. And obviously, I mean, just by the energy in this room, we'd call that somewhat of a teachable moment, right? I think you guys are primed to learn about speed and velocity and average speed and everything that he used this lesson to do. a couple of, one cool thing is that in his additional resources, he actually linked to some videos that he himself made on YouTube as well. He's a great, resourceful teacher. So that's the best flips. And then the last sort of pattern and use case that we're seeing arise, and is by far my favorite, is this idea of student as the teacher. It usually happens in a couple of ways. We hope that it happens in a lot more ways in the future, but the main ways that we're seeing is that a teacher will divide a room up into 2 groups of students or 4 groups of students, whatever, and challenge the groups to create a lesson for each other. And so the students leverage the TED-Ed platform to create that lesson, which of course requires you to learn it and to actually be able to create the lesson around it. And then there's something very fun about taking your peers' lesson and seeing how you do and receiving feedback from them. That peer-to-peer instruction is wonderful. And then the other model that we've seen a lot is that the teachers will basically either put up one video or just throw them the keys to YouTube and ask them to create lessons on what they're teaching. And so it's really exciting to see. We're really excited to see how that front develops, but I want to show you one example of a student who took it even a step further from the UK. This is Ellen.
Hi, I'm Ellen. I'm going to show you how to sew a bag by using a sewing machine. It's really simple. To start sewing, you'll need a sewing machine, a pedal, a stool, a right amount of material, a pair of scissors, a pot of pins, and a template.
Ping. I love Ellen's story because I think what's really important to know is she's an 11-year-old from the UK, and she stumped most of our staff with this until we finished watching her 10-minute video that she and her father made, and then now we all know the answer to this. And the most interesting thing is that, well, actually, let me tell you this next part first, and then I'll double back to that. So it turns out her dad is a writer for Wired magazine for UK, and this was part of him exploring the tool, and so he helped her make that video, and he linked to her lesson in the article, and the article was very well distributed, and so now Ellen is officially a teacher to thousands of people, and she's very passionate, as you could tell, about sewing. And she's getting responses from all over the world via her dad's publication and the platform. And I just love the two-way nature of that exchange. Is the lesson the best in the world? No. Is it the most adorable? Is it the most adorable in the world? Yes. But the point is that she is like taking ownership of this instruction, and that she's engaged with people all over the world, and she'll have that orientation towards learning for the rest of her life. I love that, and I hope we can figure out ways to design for that experience to happen again and again. I'm going to bust through these pretty fast because Rick inspired me to talk about something else that's next that's not included in this deck. But I showed you some of the modules on the side. We want to create more. We want to create an application environment around these lessons so that teachers have more and more options. Some of them on the table, these aren't definitely going to be made, are the ability to use it as a language learning tool, to acquire language or to translate so that it's more accessible around the world. Obviously, discussions is a sort of self-explanatory one where people have the ability to publicly discuss rather than answer questions just instructor to student. Speak is this idea of answering with your voice rather than with typing. I think there's a great, a huge benefit to being able to articulate things better than I'm articulating right now. And this make concept is the idea of project-based learning and the idea of learning by doing. So the video is basically just a primer for actually getting your hands dirty and learning this thing in a physical way. And we'd like to facilitate that at scale, so we're exploring that. This is a feature that has just been released. The best flips are now flippable. So now all the teachers who are using the TED-Ed platform to create lessons are in a sense doing a little bit of work for the next teacher. So someone could go to Greg Schwanbeck's lesson and flip it and personalize it for their class, and ostensibly, hopefully in the future, translate it for their class or add that speak module for their class, and a variety of other things. And then lastly, we want to empower Ellen. She's committed to making a couple more sewing videos, and we want to empower her and other educators around the world to do that. That's the end of the presentation. I really wanted to talk about one thing that Rick brought up. Let me think of how to put this. Basically, he got me really fired up about this concept of, not, how do I say it? It's making the important measurable, not the measurable important, if that makes sense. Because I think in schools, and Christian did this too, and that's not my quote, by the way. I don't know whose it is. Last person I heard use it was Sir Ken Robinson, a TED speaker about education. But I think we see standards which serve a purpose and which are very important, run a little bit rampant in our schools, all these concepts of teaching to the test and all this stuff. And it measures some things, as Christian was saying, but it also, as Christian was saying, it doesn't measure so many other things: grit, stick-to-itiveness, the power to, learn from failure, all the reasons that you would actually hire someone or want to sit at the table with someone or work with someone. And so our goal with this platform that we're designing, aside from just being an overall useful tool, is we're starting to develop this concept of what we're calling a lifelong learning line. And I think it's what you were talking about. It's about the learning. It's not about how many multiple choice questions you got right, although that can give you one specific data point of how the learning has happened. But it's a much broader picture. And so we want everything that we design, all these hopeful things that I've been saying we're thinking about with this beta product, is to create something where you're documenting basically a portfolio of your work that gives you a chance to reflect, that gives you a chance to create, that gives you a chance to fail, but then to exhibit how you learn from your failure. And then what we're incredibly excited about, because portfolio assessment is not our idea, this is an idea that is used in some fields, but generally it's not used because it's impractical, because you can't compare portfolios. There's not a standardized score. You can't say, all of the work that you did is better or worse than all of the work that he did simply because you guys came from different walks of life. But we're convinced that with the scales and the particular economies and the network effect that the internet does provide, and as this internet becomes more and more ubiquitous around the world, that while there may not be a way to compare it, that there is a way to make it practical, so that when you apply to college, or when you leave college to start a business, or when you're trying to communicate your interests and values to someone else for whatever end, that you can communicate quickly and effectively your stick-to-itiveness, your grit, and the things that you're passionate about, because everything that build that portfolio will have been based on those things in the first place. And so I guess this is all to say that it's very nice to hear that direction assured from such esteemed people working in such successful learning communities, and everything that we're doing is designed to capture that spirit. And so thank you. And thank you.
Yeah, you guys are. We're going to do a really rapid fire. I'm going to ask these two gentlemen to sort of play jazz, to borrow from Logan, very, very quickly. And they're also going to model something we're going to ask you to do. And that is, towards the end of, as we get close to 11 o'clock, all of these tables will have pitched one aspiration or one solution. But you have no more than 30 seconds to do that. And that doesn't mean you need to use all 30 seconds. Maybe 2 sentences is all you need. Because ultimately, is it sticky? So I'm going to ask you guys to take on that challenge. Whatever response you have, try not to go beyond 2 sentences, because you probably already said the part that we're going to remember. And it doesn't have to be right. It just has to be something we're considering, if that's fair. Okay. So these are based on, I took tons of notes. Both of you talked in one way or another. Rick, you sort of started us out with this idea of don't wait till you get it right, just do it, just start. And TED Ed is in beta. You launched something globally that wasn't finished. So I'm curious if you could give recommendations to a really diverse group of people in this room that one way or another are going to have an impact on the learning environments going forward, or the capacity to support and invest in the learning environments. How can you recommend to all of us how to live that life of just do it or beta? Because to a degree, that's a big part of the future of learning, is to live in that state, which isn't necessarily what the history of education has done.
So can I give you an example?
Absolutely. Yep.
So as Logan was talking, Lou said to me on the side, are you using TED Ed? And the answer is no, because I probably don't have the same awareness that I have now. But what I said was, we actually are messing with, and that's the word I would use, the Khan Academy, which you probably have heard about. But like, how do you use that in school? I mean, that's like nice for if you're home at night at 8 o'clock at night. But that's where the power of our people is so great. So I had a principal that said, hey, why don't we do this? I'm past 30 seconds. Why don't we do this in the summer? And why don't we just tell our kids and parents, just go do this stuff? And that's what they did. And so what happens is, in that particular case, is our kids are walking in with a lot more competency that is measured, because we have the backside analytics to tell us they're a lot more competent relative to what they need in that middle school math curriculum. And I think TED Ed has the same opportunity, but that's, again, playing with things where nobody knows the right answer. We just start doing stuff.
Yeah, I learned something neat last week. I tried to do 2 sentences. I blew it. I was at a conference at YouTube with a bunch of people who are creating videos that we're featuring, and they're brilliant content creators, just some of the best videos you've ever seen. And they all subscribe to improvisation mentality. It literally translates from the stage how it's taught. And the rule is, and you almost completed the rule in your presentation, that you can't say no or but, because those are the things that really ruin an improvisation. So if we were doing a gag up here, if I said a no, it would set up a hurdle that, all humor would be sucked out of the room. And I think that
Logan, but
no. I'm sorry. But I think that when you're talking about response able, as Christian said, that could also be translated to being able to improvise, in a working environment or a learning environment or an environment where you need to respond. And so I think that the concept of just start it, coupled with the idea of just keep starting it, keep iterating, is really what I hope the students of today leave school with.
All right, so as an advocate for this relationship, ultimately we need the world at large to not only just reinforce the right answers, but also to help us create environments where students and educators can mess around, as well as how do we foster an attitude of yes and. And so none of us know how to pull that off, because we as collective intelligent communities have not been charged with that. And I think going forward, that's one. One way or another, both of you speak about and suggest that a culture of collaboration is a minimum expectation. That if you don't create cultures of collaboration, we can't go forward. And so often in schools, teachers are isolated behind closed doors. Students' GPAs are isolated. Schools are isolated from the community. So how do you, and I'm gonna say instead of 2 sentences, imagine you had to tweet this. No, you say as long as you want. But how do we foster, or how do we encourage everyone in this room help us create cultures of collaboration that dramatically improve the capacity of K-12 higher ed, et cetera. So what comes to mind in any order?
Well, we put the 140 characters together, right?
You can have all of their 140 characters too. Yes, sir.
You can have mine too.
My short definition, and actually in many of my presentations I talk about this, we have moved from what I call the defined classroom model. Everybody knows what that looks like. It's 1,000 square feet, it's 30 desks, it's one teacher, got the picture, little red schoolhouse. The fact is, the reality is that our kids are in an unrestricted learning environment 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. That means that they're collaborating everywhere, and by the mere fact you say tweet, that's collaboration. When you talk about other kinds of social media, that's collaboration, and that can be done in a learning context. In fact, most of our kids, Ariel does it in a learning context.
I'm really excited about the sort of growing science of collaboration. We're just entering a zone where we can measure certain at least online collaboration. It's freshman year in that department. There's massive collaboration platforms out there, and they've all just started, and they're collaboratively getting better. So I think that it's definitely a space to watch. But I will also say though that I love collaboration. Obviously, a total necessity, but I also am an advocate for personal, individual reflection time, quiet time. I think sometimes there's so much emphasis on collaboration, at least in reform, which is very important. We need more collaboration, but I do hope that there's always space for someone to reflect.
A little bit of trivia. 100 years ago in the United States, 50% of all American students were in one-room schoolhouses. 1 century ago, the average student was in a one-room schoolhouse. Now think about where we are just 10 decades later in terms of context. I want to talk have you answer one more question, and then we're going to ask them to dive in. Both of you in one way or another, both examples encourage innovation. In fact, to go back to yours, instead of rewarding compliance, you asked a question, are you punished for not complying? Are you punished for not innovating? To a degree, you can't even be beta, let alone have a day 2, unless people innovate constantly and almost hack your model. And it's an interesting thing about TED that they have a proprietary investment in it being successful, but they allow the world to hack it on a daily basis. It's a completely different mindset as an organization to let go of the trusted product so that others can improve it. So to a degree, what advice can you give or what insights do you have about that idea of being able to reward innovation as opposed to simply maintain compliance?
All right, Logan, go for it.
I really liked what you had to say about it. I mean, I think it's just struggling to find something concise to say, but the spirit of innovation is really the most important thing that we can not only sort of teach, but also model. One of the things, so we call it flip this lesson, and it's a nod of a hat to a nod of the hat, is that the saying? To a tip of the hat to this nascent style of teaching called flip teaching. And it's not the perfect teaching model. It's constantly evolving. There's things about it that are great. There's valid criticisms of it. But the reason that I personally, not as an organization, but me personally love it is that the flip teacher is very transparent about his or her classroom with the students, and they stand up there and they tinker. They literally tinker, and they get the students invested in improving their own learning environment. And it's that innovation that is the whole point in the first place. So didn't answer your question at all, but over to you, Rick.
All right, and in summation, there's actually a couple of terms I would use. Innovation, I think, is kind of a natural occurring issue. If you give people opportunity, they naturally innovate. So that's a natural phenomena. The flip of that is control. And yet that's structurally what we do most often. And so we have to think about how do we re-engineer that organization. And so when I talk to our folks at the state level, state superintendent and so forth, those guys are always, and we, meaning school superintendents, we're about control. So as soon as we say, let's innovate and let's collaborate and let's do those things, we put together a structure to control the innovation and the collaboration. And we've got to resist that, and we have to talk again about we are not going to do this unnatural thing called control, but we're going to move to the natural and therefore protective thing called innovation.
Clearly, that's just the beginning of what either could have shared, and there's a lot of wisdom in the room. So we graciously want to say thank you for letting us be a couple of voices, but now we want to shift to you. And so here's going to be the quick ninjutsu move. And what they're going to do along with me is at the very end, if one thing really resonates with us as a pattern, as a gestalt, not that's the winning idea, we will give voice to that like a Quaker meeting. We'll be called to speak. But ultimately, what we're interested in is in the final 10 minutes of this morning, so as 11 o'clock nears, can we suddenly have an avalanche? And I just spent breakfast with two guys that literally deal with avalanches in real life. Can we have an avalanche of possibilities and not overanalyze why they will work? So that's going to be your charge. Okay, so you guys get to sit and relax, or maybe go take a nap after Tokyo, or go see if the weather here is as good as we've been telling you it is. So here's your challenge. Suddenly, as a teacher, I'm tethered. We're interested in this idea of hyperlocal and ever-global. And if we imagine both are always and. And in fact, if anything, in terms of the trends of, the trends of tribal, we're moving into a world that appears to be flattening and appears to be becoming ever-global, but is becoming increasingly more and more tribal, more and more localized, more and more immediately what I know to be true. We don't even read the same newspapers anymore. We read the one that confirms what we believe, which means we can't have a dialogue because we're not even reading the same things anymore. But if we imagine it's not either or, it's an and proposition, which, Logan, hopefully that supports your yes thing. So I want to give you all a Future of Learning Incubator Challenge. Ultimately, regardless of what I put up here next, your table has to come up with an incubator that will support the future of learning. And from this point on, you can hack anything I say. You can flip the lesson. So if you were to go 4 years ago and somebody has said, just point to me all the venture capital teams around the world that are investing in the future of education, you would have found none. You look today, there are a minimum of 10, including NASA, that has a VC meets incubator meets future of education platform in NASA. And they don't even do space travel anymore. They're like IBM. They got rid of computers and became the great global strategist overnight. You'll see endless in the last 3 years investment in the future of education. And a lot of it is VC money looking for which part of their portfolio they can flip. But underneath the surface of that is an attitude of startup, an attitude of launch, an attitude of 18-year-olds saying, I'd love to get a degree, but more importantly, I want to start the university. It's a completely interesting thing. So here's your challenge. I'll let you read because everybody's bright and has eyes. In terms of time, it's 10:20, which means no matter what, at 10:50, we start to pass a microphone. It says 30 minutes, but I'm already chewing into it because you don't need 30 minutes. Probably in 15 minutes, you already have something worth pitching. What I want you to imagine is that you, as a team, will create an incubator, and it can be in this community of North Canton, it can be wherever, it can be agnostic, it doesn't really matter. You cannot spend more than $10,000 in a year. Minimum, you will launch 10 initiatives, whether they're a day in duration or last up to a year in that year. You have to demonstrate agility and innovation by any means necessary. You have to, most importantly, alter the perception of K-12, not tell it how to get better. There's a difference. And you have to have also a positive impact in the local community because why not, while we're doing it. You have less than 30 minutes to plan and no more than 30 seconds to pitch. I would recommend that if we need more than 3 or 4 sentences, we probably aren't going to remember you given how much incredible is going to come our way. This isn't an elevator pitch. This is bang. Because we want to think about it tomorrow morning. We don't want to just be right today. Ultimately, and this is to play off the gentleman that I was up on stage, room already thought of that. If you get there quickly, push a little harder, but you don't need 3 weeks to come up with your idea. 2, anybody has an idea, follow up with yes and, not yeah but. 3, don't let us ever unthink your phrase, your pitch, your word, your sentence, your concept. Get into our brainstem somehow. And finally, imagine ICF, Lou, is going to showcase not only the final product, but the very premise of the idea globally. You have Post-it notes, Sharpies, more importantly, you have each other in imagination. And at about 11 of, I'm going to let you know that it's time to pitch. If you have to go to the bathroom, here's the cool thing. Just let your team know you're leaving for a minute and come back. But just don't let your team down over those 28 minutes. Good luck.